Hi, welcome. We're doing a podcast today, and the theme is retaining your millennials because they're super valuable. And we have to do something because they're about 70% of the workforce now. The millennials' day is here. And, if you're a small business, it's costing 25 grand to 100 grand per lost millennial when they take off on you. And if you're a big corporation, that's in the millions. That's so we need to really talk about it. Mid-sized corporations even spend 3 million trying to retrain and recruit, replace. Now we've got a real expert here today, and it's somebody I'm working with and I recommend personally, Tom Lemke, and he's got what's called a gratitude initiative. It turns out that corporations are finding out that if they put in a gratitude culture, not only can they retain millennials, but all the X's and Y's and Z's and boomers and everybody else seem to get along a lot better in a gratitude culture. So that's the end thing that corporations are doing now, and even a few government agencies trying to have a gratitude culture. So Tom has started a gratitude ministry, and he'll tell you his website and where to get a hold of him. But one of his publications, when God asks you, how will you answer when you get to the pearly gates? What are you going to say? You know, and uh, and I think Tom's message is you better be grateful. So with that, Tom, could you uh, just tell us why did you start a ministry in gratitude, and what makes you think corporations need that today?
Thank you, David. It's wonderful to be here. I was a corporate guy my whole career, but when I was 12 years old, I wanted to become a minister. And my parents kind of talked me out of it, said I was that too young to make that decision. And I grew up poor on a farm. And when I started working, when I was in high school and I earned money to buy a car, and I found out that, oh, if you have a job and you make money, you can buy things. So I started buying things and I really ended up taking marketing in college. I paid my way through college, and marketing was a brand new discipline. I was just intrigued with it, and I got a degree in marketing from the University of Wisconsin and started a marketing career. And I absolutely loved it. I started out actually in the insurance industry in what today would be called database marketing. We called it direct mail back then, but I loved it because you could send out so many ads and you could measure the exact response. You knew how much money you made on the marketing. So I fell in love with that. That now today is what everyone uses, tracking everything they do online and social media and everywhere else. So that got me going. And I really had a very successful marketing career. I had I'll call it the someday syndrome, that someday, God, I'll do something for you. I didn't do the ministry, but I'll catch up. If you just give me a little more money and give me another raise, at some point I will do something great for you. We all know that God doesn't need any more money. He doesn't need anything, especially from Tom Lemke. So I ended up being the chief marketing officer for the 20th largest retailer in the world. And I then ended up doing some consulting in Australia. I spent a month in Brazil on an assignment. I came back to Michigan and my back started hurting.
Well,
By the second day, I couldn't even get out of bed. I ended up that night hallucinating at the table, at the dinner table. And unbeknownst to me, I was taken to hospital. I went into a coma and I had sepsis, meaning blood poisoning that had gone through my entire system. So I ended up on a ventilator in a coma for 8 days, in intensive care for about a month, and I literally almost died. And I didn't even know I was in the hospital. And when I heard one day, I thought I died, and I was walking through this beautiful field of flowers, and suddenly I was standing in a light on top of this hill, and I heard this voice say to me, Tom, what have you done for me with the gifts that I gave you? I
mhm.
stood there, I didn't have an answer, and the light disappeared, and I was on top of this hill. And to my right was a road in silver going off in the distance. And on that road was every material thing that I had bought and purchased and lusted after in my life: the cars, the Porsches, the Mercedes, the boats, the houses, all that stuff. The road of materialism, that's what I was on. And on my left was a road paved in solid gold. And in that road were people. And what I saw was that there were a lot more people than there were, there were a lot more material things than there were people. And I realized at that point that God had put people in my life that I think He wanted me to do something with that I never did. And then I came out of the coma. And I didn't realize, I heard this: Tom, wake up. Tom, wake up. This is Nurse Kelly. Wake up. And I didn't know what was going on. I sort of could see light, and I realized that I must be laying on something, and I could see the ceiling. And it suddenly occurred to me that I'm alive. I'm not dead. My God, I'm still alive. And that transformed my life. From that moment on, I decided I'm so grateful to be given a second chance at life. And I'll be 77 years old in a couple months, and I really look at it as I'm 77 years young, and the best of my life is yet to come because I'm off with an attitude of gratitude. So that's a long-about way of getting to your question. And what I discovered is I started looking at companies and looking back at my career and thinking about how I sought my whole life, and I achieved pretty much everything. From the outside, people look at me and say, yeah, this guy's real successful. He's got it all going. But that inner peace was still not there. And the more I had, the more I wanted. During my hospitalization, my wife of 33 years filed for divorce, and I went bankrupt. So everything was taken away. And I'm so grateful for that. You may say, why would this guy say that he's grateful for losing everything? Because that's the only way that I learned the gratitude lesson. I'm so happy with me. I'm happy with what I have, and I'm happy with every single day of my life. And reflecting back in the corporate world, I was in marketing. I did a lot of work with customers. I worked in big corporations, 200,000 people. And I look at how they interacted with customers. And I did a lot of work in the engagement space. You can't have an engaged customer unless you have an engaged employee. And if the employee is a gnarly person standing at the register or whatever and treats the customer rudely, the customer may never say anything. They just may never come back. So you need to have an engaged employee before you can have an engaged customer. To have an engaged employee, you need to have an engaged management team that manages the employees. So it's all a big circle. It all comes back to that single word, gratitude, or as I like to say, which we're working on now, a book about thank you are the two most powerful words in business. So that's how I got to where I am today, David, in a long
Wow.
story.
It's a short story, and there's a lot of chapters there, and we're looking forward to your book. I'm going to ask you a few questions and go rapid fire. So, what now? I want to share first that I have this gratitude thing, and I too lost my job, best university in the world, and then
Yeah.
divorce came after I succeeded at the next university, but I'm succeeding on the outside, but failing on the inside, and then bankruptcy, and all at once, bankruptcy, divorce, and just a total life change. And yeah, I remember saying, God, I will do anything to get out of this. But then a month later, Dr. David was saying, yeah, I'm out of it. So, yeah, maybe I won't do all of those things I said I'll do. But you had your commitment. What's the difference between what I did and you did?
Well, that's an interesting question. I can certainly empathize with that. And as I've gone around and read about a lot of other people's lives and how they ended up, being grateful, Sometimes we have to hit bottom. I didn't know what bottom was, and we all have a different level of bottom. Some people
Hmm.
never hit the kind of bottom that you and I have experienced, but I think it's different, David, because my life was because I had that vision when I was in a coma that I literally thought I was dead.
Hmm.
And I saw my body lying in a casket. I saw my son holding a funeral brochure with my name in it. Thomas W. Lemke, the name of the funeral home in Wisconsin, was on the front. I knew that's where they'd send my body. People were all around, and I just knew that I'm dead. And when I saw that going to light, and I couldn't look into light, it was so bright, but I thought, yeah, I am dead. This is it. So I think it may have been a little bit different, but other than that, the end result is the same. I think God works in different ways. I got hit with a 2x6. Maybe you got hit with a 2x4 and it worked for you.
Well, in Genius Unlocked, they tell us, would you rather be hit with a feather or a brick or a truck? So the truck came along. I got hit with a brick with those things, but then the truck came when I had cancer and they said, you're going to die in a few months or maybe a year or two. And then I got to the right doctors and the right radiation, et cetera, and I'm healed. And but it was coming back from the cancer. It was coming back from the rehabilitation. It was just, I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but you can't get out of a chair anymore. You can't handle a bag of groceries. You're just weak from this. And I remember saying one day, God, I want to live. I want to live. And I was crying. And I said, that was my bottom. That was the bottom where I said, okay, I'm not going to keep going down anymore. This is the bottom, and I'm going to start climbing up. And I'm climbing up with you and Olivia now. Hope you don't mind. So,
No, no, I'm so happy about it. I'm glad you're sharing your story. You know, I didn't want to spend a lot more time on this, but when I was in the hospital for so long, I lost, I lost a lot of muscle and things, and I couldn't walk. They weren't sure the damage that sepsis had done, like to my brain or my bodily functions or anything. And one day they tried to get me out of bed to walk, and I realized that I couldn't even stand up. I was so weak. And they put me in a wheelchair and they started, we got to get you back up to walk. And they wheel me a little bit. And I was so weak I couldn't get out of the chair. And then they say, come on, push yourself up. And I tried day after day after day, and I just couldn't do it. And I started thinking, you know what? I'm just, being in a wheelchair, I guess isn't the worst thing in the world. I guess that's what I'm going to be now for the rest of my life. But then somehow I just started to try to push on that chair. And I'll never forget that one day where I was actually able to push myself up high enough to get up. It was like I felt like I had a car on top of me. And I pushed and I pushed, and I got up far enough that I got my butt off the chair and I collapsed down in the chair. And that was a moment when I changed my mind, when it was like, you know what? I'm not going to get wheeled out of this place. I'm going to walk out of here. And the hospital was a big circular building, and I would start in the wheelchair first, taking me out of my room. And I was determined that I'm going to walk out the door of this place. And I got to where by the time I was leaving, I was walking 5 miles a day inside that hospital. And they'd call me Speedy because I'd be walking by first with a wheelchair, and then I'd be going by my crutches, and then I was going with a cane and the walker thing. I burned off 3 sets of tennis balls on the front of the four-legged walker walking around.
that's
But I'll tell you, I did
amazing. That's
walk out the
amazing.
door. One of my friends and I, we have a saying, we're too stupid. When we're like in a boxing ring, we get punched in the face and knocked on the mat. We're too dumb to stay down. We get up and take another hit. So when I was slinging the hospital, I started thinking about
That's
what
a
he
good
had told me. I
one.
thought, yeah, this is another chance. You're knocked out again. Just get up and get going.
They used to say that about me, Tom. They'd say, well, you failed here. Why are you hanging around? You failed. aren't you embarrassed that you failed? I said, I got a family to feed. I need to
Yeah,
work. I'm going to keep going and climb back up that mountain again. And then, like Sisyphus, I'm going to fall back down. I know, but I'm going to climb back up because that's who I am. I got it. It sounds like you're that way too. Yeah.
absolutely. I always tell people that, for every day of rain, there's 100 days of sunshine. Anytime I've fallen down the mountain, for whatever reason, I bounced back up higher on the other side. And that's still the way I feel today. And I'm feeling that way at 77 years young. And it's just, I see this as the greatest time in history to be alive. And I'm so excited to be part of it.
Well, speaking
I look at companies and I think what we're talking about, David, with you and I and Olivia and the other people about how do we take all of these bumps in the road that we've experienced at our age and bring this to bear on today's world. And like you, I'm into the AI technology. I use AI all day long. I've never been afraid of technology. I embrace it. I love it. And it's just making our lives so much better. But there's things that technology can't do. It can't make you a different guy or woman or whatever as a manager. You can read the books and you can do all that, but the actual implementation is up to you. The good news about gratitude is that gratitude can be learned. It's something that can be learned, and they have enough scientific evidence now. There's a guy named, I can't think of his name now, but he's done research on the neuroscience of gratitude. He wrote a book called The Neuroscience of Gratitude. And they can measure your brain waves and they can tell how much dopamine or serotonin is added. And they've done studies on executives and employees in particular that if they have an active gratitude practice where they're actually making journal entries every day and just have an attitude of gratitude, that they will get a higher emotional intelligence level than people that don't. And it works both with management people and with employees. So you think about, all right, so what does that mean? They have a higher emotional intelligence quota. Well, when you have a higher emotional intelligence quota, you perform better, you're better to work with, and your company does better.
okay. Okay.
So in the gratitude cultures that I've researched, companies that are led with a gratitude culture, meaning it comes down from the top, it's very hard to float it up from the bottom. I want to say financially outperform the other companies by 21%.
Oh, I think that's really true. I want to give you some input here and just saying how much I am in gratitude and thankful to be working with you with the purview.org. And if people go to perview.org/number 1, it's the one, you can download a book on an ebook on what to do about millennials. Now, one of the big gaps for baby boomers like ourselves, I think I'm a baby boomer, I'm assuming you are too,
Right,
born in that boom after World War II, right there
right.
on the cusp of it, or the day it was done, just about. And we're creating programs and initiatives for a gratitude culture with mutual understanding. And I want to just share that I watched some of the earlier videos when companies started talking about how lazy millennials were, how they didn't fit in, how they weren't goal driven, how it was just impossible to get them to be high performers, et cetera. And they were making fun of them. I mean, they were actually ridiculing and laughing at them. Now that's not true anymore. Now uh, the corporations are losing so darn much money trying to replace their millennials and train new people. It's a $30 billion industry in the United States dealing with the millennial problem. Not only that, you and I know as boomers that we've led a life where we appreciate the younger generation, because we know they're going to take over. And if we're not good elders and bringing them along, we're not mentoring. It's going to be a disaster for any company, whether they're small, medium, or large. And right now, millennials are driven by meaning and growth, impact. And I believe in a gratitude culture, you're going to experience lower turnover rates. You're going to have more satisfaction with those millennials, and they're going to be the leaders, and they're going to bring up the next generation, the Z generation after them, you know? And if we don't embrace that, oh my gosh, I just think that we have a great opportunity. What I want to ask you now is, are you ready to get rid of the kind of workaholic drive, push culture that we were in, which quality, productivity, efficiency, and get to work-life balance and to be delegating things to millennials and flexible arrangements, making it the kind of workplace for gratitude culture? That is my big, long question.
Absolutely. You know, when I started looking into this, the the total cost of employee turnover just in the United States alone is over $1 trillion annually, 1 trillion with a T. Companies spend another $176 billion trying to solve the problem. But the problem goes beyond money. 91% of those people that leave for reasons other than money. The biggest one being they don't feel recognized and appreciated. The millennial turnover, as you're saying, is one of the highest turnover groups. I think it is the highest turnover group, and they particularly feel that way. They're softer side, more heartfelt driven. They're not motivated by fear, and they don't really want to put up with that kind of management, so they'll just leave. So I believe that there's a great opportunity, David, to use Purview and some of these tools that we're working on and the methodologies to help companies get that gratitude culture built. And it really starts with training the management and the management level people and get them on the program, because, like I said, I don't think it can be built from the ground up.
I hear you. Now, let me ask you another question. You know, we have millennials in our group. You know, we've got about 18
Right.
people now. There's coaches and they're consultants, strong consulting background, a few artists. Now, we've got some millennials in there. Are you willing to be mentored by a millennial? Could you stand that?
I have been mentored by people that are younger than me. And can I stand it? Yeah, because I want to learn that, in my career, if I made a mistake, um, as I look back at it, I probably kept people on too long. When people said, "Oh, this person's terrible, you should be fired," and I was always trying to, no, I can turn them into something. They're in a, it's not the person, it's the role they're in that's wrong. It's just wrong for them. It doesn't mean they're not capable. And that desire to learn, and I learned so much. My son is a millennial, so when I have a question, I learn more from him than I learn from myself by a long shot. So absolutely.
What about these new things the millennials are doing? Energy work, Reiki, meditation, things like that. My dad never did any of those things. You know, he didn't raise me to do them, you know? And yet, is that what it's going to take? Are we going to have to meditate and provide a room somewhere where people can go and, burn candles and things? I mean, what are we talking about here?
Oh, I don't look at that as a negative. I look at that as also part of the learning experience. I'll tell you, about a month ago, I've never done something called a breathing exercise in my life. Went into this training program and did about 2 hours of deep breathing, and my life changed so much. I can't believe it. And I've always been interested in learning yoga and learning these things because I think that's how I'm smart enough to know what I don't know. And I don't know where it's going to come from, but I think by going into those kind of learning techniques, and I've done a lot of corporate training and getting together and trying different things my whole career. So I know there's always, if I come out of one thing that helps me do better, that's great. So I don't see it as some kind of a mystical, wow, this is all woo-woo stuff. It's really getting a better understanding. I mean, if you said I can measure somebody's gratitude scientifically by looking at the electrical impulses in their brain, uh, fantastic, because that creates the data that allows it to be believable. And I think these techniques we're learning as we as a world evolve, let's say spiritually, and we become better people, and as we evolve consciously, all of those things will play a huge role into how we manage our lives and our work as we go forward.
I'm really
I
looking
think of it
forward
as, can
to
you
it.
imagine if everyone in
Yeah.
your business came in like in that emotional intelligence, 94% of the people in management and the people in that survey came in and were happy at work. Can you imagine, like, if the whole world walked into their work in their home in a happy state of mind? Wouldn't that be unbelievable?
I would be totally unbelievable. It would be believable. I believe it. Here's some examples. I did some research on the market that we're in, Tom, and individual coaching services, just coaching people, even outside of work. $150 to $500 an hour coaches are getting for the kinds of things you were talking about. And organizational consulting for Fortune 1000 companies, consulting fees were ranging 300 to 800 an hour, but a project cost to turn around the company, like increasing retention rates by 63%, 26% boost in performance. That could be a $500,000 investment. So,
Yes.
and I want to say I was a marketing major in my undergrad, and my management teacher said, "Oh, I was a
Oh, cool.
major," and he said, "Oh, as a favor to me, David, why don't you put management first instead of marketing on your degree?" And I did. Little did I know I would never end up in marketing again. But here I am in marketing. I have to sell. I have to be enthused about what I'm doing, which I am. I have to have the guts to, put out the positive items out there. Do the Ben Franklin bridge. Did you ever learn that in sales? You give them the reasons, the pros, and the cons, and they'll cross the bridge. This is a Ben Franklin thing.
Oh, I've not
It's
heard of
more
that, but that
pros
doesn't
than
mean it.
cons.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
So you give them a few more things, or you get them to say yes 3 times. No is a request for more information. I mean, I sold encyclopedias. I did telephone sales. I got over my fears. But I love marketing, but I love that we need to do a full overhaul on corporations. The marketing, the management, the gratitude culture, the the appreciation of elders. I am tired of companies just dumping in the elder workforce that has all the knowledge and trying to lowball the price of an employee. And it's putting too much pressure on our society. I don't know. I just think we need to get the generations all in that gratitude culture. So that's my sales pitch. Okay. I see. I'm a marketer. I can do it.
You are a marketer. You remind me that whenever there was a time after I started my own company, and I've had a couple companies, and I was really struggling financially, so I would sell cemetery lots at night. And every time my I'd say something, he'd say, "Tom, remember when you were selling those cemetery lots?" And he goes, "Are you doing that today?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, then you shouldn't be complaining about anything. Life is good."
Be
So,
grateful. Be
Be
thankful.
grateful.
Be
But yeah, and I
thankful.
think about, the evolution of data into the business world. And there was a time when companies were told, if you don't start using data to make data-driven decisions, you will not be able to compete. And I think this is the next thing that we're experiencing, that if you don't get into this gratitude and into the, let's call it more the heartfelt type of running a business, the millennials and the Gen Zs, you're going to lose them, and they're the biggest part of the workforce. So you have to adapt a company to get on that as a strategy. It's got to be part of a strategic thing. It's not a woo-woo thing. It's part of building a solid business strategy around it.
Yeah, I just found a book, and some of the things I was calling woo-woo, they're calling it energy psychology now.
There you go.
And they got scientific studies backing it up. But here's a thing to ponder. Like you and I are big on using AI. I've learned things like Slack and Zoom and Microsoft Teams, project management software, things to manage email lists, to build websites. And you know who has those skills? Millennials. They grew up with that, the
Yes.
collaborative tools, and they are natives. They have Native Americans. So you had millennial natives in these digital transformation tools. And here you and I are, I think, learning the same tools. So I believe we might be able to communicate if we do the breathing exercises, we appreciate work-life balance, stop being a workaholic. I'm not saying you're a workaholic, but I was definitely one. I'm trying to reform and still. But, I
You
took
know, it's
my wife out on a date. We went to a bookstore. We had a meal. We did a couple of other things, and we enjoyed the day for a change. You know what I mean? And before
yeah.
I become like, I don't want to waste. Well, don't tell her I said that. It's not wasting time. Oh no, this is going to get me in trouble.
When you mentioned collaboration, you said I should give you a couple of examples. I remember the companies will remain nameless because everyone would know them, but there was a environment that I worked in when we were in the ad agency business, where the client had the CEO's directive was, the person in the next cube to you is not your friend. Your job is to, if you want to get ahead, you better take advantage of that and move ahead of them. So don't trust them, don't do anything. You talk about a toxic culture. It was unbelievable. And as a result of it, the company was in the red for like years, and they finally got acquired by somebody. They restructured the business, but it's just amazing, and it's so neat to see that these kids are not like that. They're more in when they're dating, and they go out on group dates and things, and it's just a whole different generation. I absolutely love it.
I
And I think if we can share the good things about what we learned from the previous life that they don't understand because they haven't had the need to go through it, we can really help things. It was when I was in the retail space. I remember we were looking at a new store one day, brand new store, and the whole senior team was so proud of, look at how beautiful this is, and the lighting, the wide aisles, and look at all the merchandise on it. And as I was walking down the aisle, I saw this sign about every 15 feet hanging out in the aisle: shoplifters will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And I said, wait a minute, who put those signs up? Oh, that's the security put those signs up. Why do we have those up there? Because people steal stuff. And I said, so we're accusing the customer of being a thief is basically what we're doing. Take those things down. And then when I got to the front of the store, as I was leaving, I said, where's the thank you sign? Where's the thank you decal on the door? Oh, we don't have those. And I said, wait a minute, we put up signs to say, accuse them of being a thief, but we don't put up a sign that says, thank you for coming and shopping with us. So it's amazing how in the business world, some of those things just are so obvious, but because of the not taking the employee point of view, not taking the customer point of view, taking your point of view of the organization may not be the most conducive to the, we can solve the problem by some method without intimidating the customer every time they walk down an aisle.
Oh, it's beautiful, beautiful example. I trained a really wonderful company, Stu Leonard Dairy Store.
Yeah, I know Stu Leonard's. Yeah.
Yeah, and his son, Stu Jr., was in my MBA class at UCLA, and I taught him a lot of things I know about storytelling. He implemented them, and they had story meetings every morning, and they would dip into all those suggestions, and they would actually implement them. They say, well, if they want soup in a gallon, and they want it in a quart, and they want it in a pint, let's try all three. And you know what? All three took off just by
Yeah.
listening to the
They
customer.
always had that sign in Stu Leonard's that said, um,
The
if you
customer is
think
always right.
customer is always number one, if you think it's not true, then look at rule number two or whatever it was,
Oh,
something.
that's right. It was a big granite thing in front of the store.
Yeah,
And
it was
it
great.
say, go see rule one.
Yeah.
It's great. I mean, I just was amazed at how a little thing like that made a big difference. Another thing they did at Stu Leonard's is in a gratitude culture kind of way. They said, who are the employees that are doing things in a really good way and out there greeting customers and new ideas implementing and then they would bring them up on stage. They would applaud them. They'd do a newsletter thing on it, and that's I think it's not hard to do a gratitude culture. You just got to change the attitude. I had a boss like the one you mentioned, and he said, I'm not going to be friends with anybody here. You are a line on the spreadsheet. I look at the stats. That's all you are to me. And I'm going like,
Oh,
okay.
great.
I can see all the millennials just leaving. You might get away with that with old boomers, but the rest of us, the rest of the workforce is going,
Yeah.
I think it's time to leave. Yeah, well, this has been great. Let me do a wrap up and let me ask you if there's something you want to share before we go. Any bit of wisdom?
Yeah, David, what I'd like to share is that I started something a few months ago called um, the Thanks a Million movement.
Oh, yeah.
And my mission is to get a million reasons people around the world are grateful. So I started something that's www.thanks-a-million.com and can go there. You can put in your one thing you're grateful for. You can do it anonymously, or if you put the email and your first and last name in there, I will send you my Thanks a Million daily gratitude journal. We know that to practice gratitude, you number one thing anybody tells you that knows anything at all about gratitude is start using a daily gratitude journal because you need to get in a habit. As I said, gratitude is something you learn, so you want to get in a gratitude habit. Getting a habit takes at least 28 days, I think. So you want to get in there and write for a month. So I'll send it to you for free and no commitment, no obligation. We're not trying to do anything other than let's see if we can be part of creating the largest gratitude movement on the face of the earth.
Well, thank you very much, Tom Lemke. And I want to say that, Tom, I have gratitude for you and Olivia, my wife, Grace Ann, who's got a real heart for horses and ensemble leadership. And these are values, amazing aging with Olivia, gratitude with you.
Likewise.
We're putting together something that is going to resonate with millennials and it's going to resonate with all the generations because I don't think it's rocket science what we're doing. It's just patience, perseverance, and being a good finder for a change.
Yeah, and the thing is, things we're doing, David, are affordable and we know they work. So I'm very grateful to be part of this one as well, and with Olivia and with you and Grace Ann and the whole group. And I know we can really help people. We can help them with their business, but I think as a result of this process we take them through, it will also help them as an individual.
Absolutely. All right. This has been our podcast on how to retain those millennials and stop driving them away. And go to perview.org and /1. You get a free download of an ebook. And go to Tom Lemke's website, thanks a million.com, I believe. Was it .com or .org?
.com, David, .com.
So go to Tom Lemke's website, get that journal, put a couple of gratitudes in there every morning, and watch your life just change for the better. Thank you.
Absolutely.